Hi there, this is David and welcome to another entry in the Top 10 Strangest RPGs series. Here we're going to be continuing right where we left off at the summer of 2001 up until the fall of 2003. During this time, the PlayStation 2 was in its heyday and the Game Boy Advance is a veritable floodgate of quality JRPGs. I was still in college during these years, so my console gaming waned quite a bit, but somehow I was still able to keep up with all the great titles. As usual, I'll be presenting the games in release order, so let's get started. Number 10. Shadow Hearts, released in June of 2001 for the PS2. Here we have the first game of a fairly successful series which unfortunately dropped off the face of the earth after the death of the PS2. The story follows a harmonixer named Yuri who lives in an alternate version of the real-life Earth on the eve of World War I. Throughout the course of the game, you'll be traveling from Asia to Europe to protect Alice, a girl that he's never met, all because an otherworldly voice inside of his head tells him to. Everything in Shadow Hearts, from the unique narrative to the gameplay, is totally bizarre because it's based around the Judgment Ring. Stopping the ring in the correct places is utilized in everything from the battles to the puzzles to even shopping for items. One of the best things about the game, though, is all the allusions that it makes to the real-world events and people, such as your antagonist, Roger Bacon, being a real friar and scholar from the 1200s, who we would regard as a scientist today, but he was seen as a wizard in his time. Number 9. Advance Wars, released in September of 2001 for the Game Boy Advance. This is a long-running series beginning on the NES that, much like Fire Emblem, never saw the light of day outside of Japan until the release of the Game Boy Advance. As they're both strategy RPGs, I can't help but compare the two Juggernaut series. They're both easy to pick up and play, turn-based, and feature rock-paper-scissors combat. But while Fire Emblem is pretty standard in regards to its setting and plot, Advance Wars takes a more futuristic approach to its battling. Here, instead of controlling cavalry, Pegasus, or archers, you'll be commanding tanks, infantry, anti-aircraft guns, and airplanes. Another fun inclusion that in today's day and age would probably become DLC is a map-making mode. You can create and design your own maps, then play against your friends using the link cable. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, make sure to look into this series as well. Number 8. Car Battler Joe, released in November of 2001 for the Game Boy Advance. Are you a car fanatic? Do you like RPGs too? Well, then I have the game for you. Here you play as Joe, a car battler who, in addition to competing for the title of the best car battler in the land, has to also complete odd jobs around town, collect and build your own custom cars, upgrade your garage, and expand the village's economy. The simulation aspect is well done, and it doesn't drag down the main portion of the game. Battling and driving are one and the same, taking place in a Mode 7 environment as your cars blast each other to smithereens. Joe can level up his car, and in true RPG fashion, it's fully customizable, and you can choose which stats to increase with enough experience, as well as finding car parts for upgrades scattered around with the various roads. This is truly a unique gem, and I would highly suggest checking it out if you get the chance. Number 7. The Xenosaga trilogy, first released in February of 2002 for the PS2. Here we're actually going to be looking at a trilogy of games, and for those unaware, this was actually supposed to be a grouping of 6 games, with Xenogears acting as the 5th. However, due to budget constraints and poor sales, it got knocked down to only 3 games, which is doubly shameful because man, I would have loved to see a Xenogears remake. The story takes place far in the future during humanity's colonization of the galaxy. However, the colonizers have lost the original location of Earth, which is now referred to as Lost Jerusalem. The planets that have been colonized by humanity have formed a federation which is under attack by an alien race called the Gnosis. I honestly could do an entire video just on the game's plot, so the brief amount of time that I've dedicated to this series here just can't do the game's lore true justice. You really do have to play it for yourself to see how strange and spectacular it is. However, I will give you one word of warning. Xenosaga 1 and 3 are far superior to the second installment. Number 6. Evolution Worlds, released in July of 2002 for the GameCube. This is a combined port of Evolution 1 and 2, first released on the Dreamcast as separate games, then combined into one game for the GameCube. The first installment, though, kinda got the shaft, with the majority of its content being cut and instead told in the form of voiced cutscenes, while Evolution 2 remained fully intact. It kinda reminds me of the Popolo Croix port for the PSP in that regard, and I personally like it. It trims the fat from the game and ensures that it doesn't take forever to beat. The game and NPCs are extremely quirky, and half the fun is just wandering around and seeing your interactions around town. This port is pretty amazing because whereas the Dreamcast version only had Japanese voice acting in random dungeons, here we get English voices along with carefully planned and designed dungeons. Number 5. Dark Cloud 2, released in November of 2002 for the PS2. While the first game is a bit rough around the edges, the sequel is fantastic and one of the best action RPGs on the system. The story is nothing grand, it just serves as an excuse for your adventure. But the real meat of the game is in the randomly generated dungeons that you'll be exploring, which I normally hate, but I didn't mind it too much here. All that can be pretty humdrum, but as an inventor you'll be utilizing your camera to find inspiration for objects to create, as well as design your own super powerful vehicles to steamroll your enemies with. The Giorama mode is back, which allows you to be the architect of your very own town, designing and painting the buildings, as well as recruiting townsfolk to migrate there. With traveling back and forth to the future sprinkled in, this game is one of the most innovative around. It earns its title as a strange game. It's just a shame that there's no third installment. Yet. Number 4. Unlimited Saga, released in December of 2002 for the PlayStation 2. The graphics are beautiful and the soundtrack is one of the best that I've ever heard. Like many Saga games, you start off by choosing your protagonist from one of 7 adventurers, each with a different story and goal, which is a nice foundation for a good game. But that won't be found here. Talk about $50 down the drain. Square Enix really went overboard with their experimentation here. Saga games are always a bit esoteric, and you never really know what you're going to get when you pick one up. But I don't think that the designers even knew what they were doing with this one. It plays more like a randomized board game than anything else. Everything is dependent on the random number generator down to the nth degree. There's randomness involved in all the battles, the shopping system, and even the movement system. It just doesn't work, but it is strange in a bad way. Number 3. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, released in February of 2003 for the PlayStation 2. This was the first SMT game that I played, and I resisted starting it up for many years because I just didn't seem like my cup of tea. Featuring a dark atmosphere of demons and monster recruiting, it just seemed to be the antithesis of what I typically like. I guess I was just so used to the bright, cheery graphics of your typical Final Fantasy, Tales, or Dragon Quest, but boy was I wrong. The game is fantastic, and it's actually the 3rd game in the mainline series first introduced on the NES. The series takes place in a post-apocalyptic Tokyo where just about everyone else is dead. As a half-human, half-demon, you can converse with monsters to recruit them to your side, as well as fuse them to create even more powerful demons. Don't get me wrong though, this is no walk in the park Pokemon. Nocturne is one of the hardest RPGs that I've ever played. And it's interesting that you don't exactly know what happened. The whole point is to find out why the world was destroyed and why the way that you are. Do yourself a favor and play this masterpiece if you haven't already. Number 2. Final Fantasy X-2, released in March of 2003 for the PlayStation 2. I can hear it now in the comments. This is Final Fantasy. How is it strange? Well, those of you who have played it certainly know that it is. Compare this to any other game in the entire series and it sticks out like a sore thumb. As the first direct mainline sequel where Sin is defeated and Spear is at peace, Square had to figure out how to make this game work, and they made it work by making Yuna a pop star, filling the game to the brim with mini-games, nonsensical villains, girl power, dress-up, and the most maddening 100% completion to ever grace a game. I mean, if you skip a cutscene, you won't get your 100%. It's some bullshit. Remember those Choose Your Own Adventure books? Well, this is kind of like your Choose Your Own RPG. The entire world is open right from the get-go, and there are only a few mandatory places to go each chapter. But again, if you want that 100%, you'd better explore every single area in its entirety for all 5 chapters. What were they thinking? It gets real old, real fast. And number 1, Drakengard, released in September of 2003 for the PlayStation 2. You know how most RPG heroes act heroic, stoic, and are paragons of virtue? Well, that's not going to happen here. Welcome to the game where your main cast is composed of incestuous psychopaths, cannibals, and pedophiles. The visuals are actually pretty unsettling, and the game is just odd. It's an action RPG in the style of Dynasty Warriors, but with an aerial dragon riding twist. That might sound pretty cool, but it gets old quickly. In order to gain the trust of the dragons, our intrepid hero trades his voice for that power, and then you continue to find other crazy whack jobs who sacrifice dearly for power as well. This may sound well and good, but please hear me whenever I say that this is not a good game. In fact, in Japan it's called Drag On Dragoon because it just drags on forever. After about 10 hours you'll beat the game and you'll have a satisfying ending, only for it to suddenly declare that it's not actually over, and you have to complete more missions to see other endings, many of which make no sense. Instead of letting it drag on, I would recommend you just stop with the first ending of this strange one. Well, that's it for the countdown. What do you think of the strangest RPGs that you've ever played? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments, and have a good day.